La blancura tiene tanto poder. The mythology of whiteness. How is it that whiteness has so much power? ¿Cómo es que la blancura tiene tanto? ¿Cómo es que la blancura tiene tanto poder? How does whiteness have so much power? We live our lives on stages, wondering what is going on. Who are you? Who are you? Who are you? Contemplating, thinking on how we can move on. Who are you? before they were sent away. Who are you? Who are you? Who are you? It was called the point of no return, 'cause they never came back home after that day. Who are you? Who are you? All of their loved ones screaming, praying for repentance of sins. Who are you? Who are you? Who are you? Little did they know that they were far more sacred than all of them. Who are you? Who are you? I see the ships on the horizon trying to, all of my brothers and sisters, I see the ships on the horizon trying to find us, trying to find us. I see the ships on the horizon trying to find us, 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 trying to. We are gathered, Buiti Wayu, that means beautiful morning in Taino. My name is Janetza, I am from Borinquen. We are gathered here on the unceded land of the Lenape peoples. We ask you to join us in acknowledging the Lenape community, their elders, both past and present, as well as future generations. We also recognize the labor upon which this educational institution, state, and country is built. Peoples of African ancestry who were enslaved and forcibly brought to this land, and whose forced labor played a major role in the formation of this country. We are indebted to their uncompensated labor and their unwilling sacrifice over hundreds of years, which continues to impact generations today. We honor the legacy of the African diaspora and the continued contribution of their survivors. We acknowledge the contributions of all immigrant labor, forced labor, and undocumented people who contributed and continue to contribute to the building and the feeding of this land. We acknowledge their immeasurable sacrifices and work that allow us to gather in this space today. Let us not forget. Let us honor and engage with the people who have stewarded and labored on this land for generations. And let us honor these truths by taking responsibility as a community to continually educate ourselves about these realities, to affirm our commitment to justice through continual action, and to protect and to sustain this land. Thank you.
Thank you one more time to Janetza Maria Miranda, please. My name is Joel Towers. I'm the president of the New School. It is my honor to welcome you here today for this keynote event, Building Local to Global Climate Coalitions. I don't have to remind you all here that while environmental policy, regulations, research, and budgets are under historic and systemic attacks, there are unique local to global climate coalitions emerging, powered by the vision and voices of communities that also bring together policymakers, philanthropy, and the academy to repair and rebuild our futures now. This wave of coalitions are supported by people and policies to make change happen. What I can tell you and what I know is that people are not standing down. They are rising up and coming together. This year, Climate Week in New York City alone has over 800 events, and we thank you for choosing to rise up with us here today. While I am president of the New School, one of the reasons I am standing here before you today is that I had the honor and the privilege of helping 20 years ago to start the Tishman Environment and Design Center and to be its first director here at the New School. John Tishman, whose we honor with naming this beautiful auditorium, had the vision back then to recognize the critical issues that would be facing the world today. This center is most incredibly and ably directed today by Dr. Ana Baptista. You will be, yes, let's hear it for Ana, my colleague here at the New School. What I can tell you is that she inherits a critical tradition. Cast your mind back 20 years. 20 years ago, when we started this center, was before Massachusetts versus the EPA in 2007. It was before the endangerment finding in 2009. It was before Paris in 2015. It was before the infrastructure bill and the IRA, and before whatever this fever dream is today that seeks to tear it all down in favor of oil and gas and at the cost of justice. And what I can say to you is not here, not now, not at this institution, not in this city, not through the Tishman Center. We stand for justice. We stand for a future that is built on environmental justice, a resilient future, and a just transition that does not change. Our work continues here. It's not easy, but it continues here, and it is both for this time and for the generations to come and for all those generations before us. And so I thank you for being here and for participating in this event today. I have the honor now to introduce Abigail Ross Hopper, whose bio you see here, and I will just tell you she is president and CEO of the Solar Energy Industries Association, the National Trade Association for America's Solar and Storage Industry, and a changemaker sponsor of today's event. Please welcome Abigail Ross Hopper.
Thank you. Thank you, President Towers. Thank you for your leadership and your vision and your inspiring words. So, good morning, everyone. How are you? Good. Fired up and ready to go? Yeah? All right. Let's bring it. I am Abby Hopper. I have the privilege of being the president and CEO of the Solar Energy Industries Association. And it is so amazing to be here in New York City this week and with people who understand the urgency of the moment, right? Who are not letting what's happening in Washington, where I happen to be from and happen to live, sort of negate our spirit, but instead inspire us to do even more. So SEIA, you might be wondering, what in the heck is SEIA? What is this Solar Energies Industries Association you're talking about? Well, it is the National Trade Association for the solar and storage industry. That means that our members are companies, they are businesses, some are owned by an individual proprietor, some are publicly traded, they cover all sectors of the market. They're companies that put solar on your roof, solar on commercial buildings here in New York City, solar in deserts in the West, and everything in between. They're manufacturers of solar products, they are financiers, they are developers, they are we have landscaping companies, we have innovative battery storage companies. So all of those groups are represented by SEIA. And so we are their voice in Washington, but also in capitals around the country. And so you might not have ever heard of us before, but we've been around for 50 years. We're 51 now, actually. We had our 50th anniversary gala last year. And I have been, right? We're a resilient bunch. We are a resilient bunch. And I'm going to be honest with you, I've had this job, I can say it here, since I left being a political in the Obama administration, he was a wonderful man to work for. This is the hardest year we've had. This is absolutely the hardest year we have had as an industry, right? The challenges that we've faced, but also as a community. Things that expand well beyond the issues of clean energy and have to do with our human rights and our humanity and our civil discourse and our care for each other. And so it has, I think for each of us, at least in my organization, has taken a toll on us professionally, but it's also taken a toll on us personally. And so it really means a lot to stand here in solidarity with everyone and be reminded that there are good people in this world and people that are committed to addressing the challenges that we face and addressing the injustices. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about sort of what's been happening. There aren't that many people that will say this, but I'll say it. Well, there are many people in Washington that will say this, okay? That's where I'm from. This administration is incredibly hostile to our industry, right? Like, let's just call it like it is. They do not want us to grow. They do not want us to prosper. They certainly do not want clean energy solutions in homes across America. And so it has been both a legislative challenge, but also a regulatory onslaught in the last few months. As you know, I don't call it anything other than HR1. HR1 passed July 4th weekend. July 4th was the day that our president signed it. And I don't know about you, but I needed to take some time away. So I stared at the ocean, I sat on the beach, I kind of gathered myself. And the next working day was a Monday. The president did a whole bunch of stuff against clean energy. And so it was a rough way to start the week, but I decided, you know what, I'm not gonna stop there. And I spent one of those days, on Wednesday, I believe, I went to a not a groundbreaking, those are good. Ribbon cuttings are better, because it means it's already been built. I went to a ribbon cutting of a community solar project in Maryland. And it was an amazing experience, and you know why? Because it reminded me that no matter what is happening on the policy side and what's happening on the political side, that we're gonna continue to choose clean energy. We're gonna continue to build solutions that work. And it was incredible, but you know what? It was incredible because it was really about the people. That project will fuel 400 homes. There's sheep on it. It's creating a different way of life. And I think the message I want to leave you with is that when I talk about clean energy, you might think, okay, Abby, solar panels, inverters, wires, batteries, but it's also people, right? It is communities that have been impacted. It is about resilience. It's about building a better future for all of us. So when we invest in solar and storage, we're not just investing in technology, but we're investing in communities. We're investing in lowering energy bills for our neighbors. We're investing in local jobs that sustain small businesses, and we're also investing in stronger, more reliable power for all of us as we face these worsening climate impacts. And so when we think about the future of energy, we think about putting communities first. You all know that families bearing the highest energy burdens are often experiencing the most impactful parts of climate change. And that's why we do what we do. That's why our organization does what it does. So I want to say we were in Las Vegas last week, 40,000 people from the solar and storage industry. We are an incredibly resilient bunch. We stand with you. We stand united with you. We stand united with you in justice and look forward to all that can happen when we work together. And now I have the privilege of welcoming everyone, these fabulous panelists here, to a conversation on building coalitions powered by communities that lead to healthy, prosperous, equitable, and sustainable futures. Thank you.
Thank you, Abigail. Welcome, everyone. Good morning. How's everybody doing? Yes, all right. Maybe this is the first panel of the day for you all running around on Climate Week. Welcome. My name is Dr. Ana Baptista, and I'm going to be one of your co-moderators, along with my compañera here, Stephanie. I am a professor here, associate professor in environmental policy and sustainability management at the New School, and I run a center called the Tishman Environment and Design Center here that Joel mentioned. We've been around for 20 years, and we're very proud to be a resource and accompanier to community organizations and environmental justice groups around the country. And we do research, policy, and we try to amplify the beautiful solutions that are really coming from the grassroots through convenings like this one. So you are the lucky few. This is going to be the most exciting panel you're going to go to today, I promise you. You better believe it. So we're going to do this panel in a way to model what it looks like to build a coalition, a diverse coalition, a coalition built from the grassroots, indigenous, local voices, all the way to the global. And we're going to model it. We're sort of prototyping it. You know, the designers and activists and organizers know we prototype. We test things out. We're going to do a little bit of an experiment with the panel where we're going to build that coalition out by bringing on folks and voices into the panel. Then we're going to start with our grassroots indigenous voices, and then we're going to continue to bring on city, state, national, and global. And these folks all work at those scales, across all those scales. And so, and in part of that, we're also going to bring in and spice it up a little bit with your participation. So you don't get to just sit there. You're going to actually join us in the conversation. In the first part of the panel, I'm going to help moderate, and then we're going to go to the second part of the panel after a little audience interaction, and Stephanie's going to take over the moderation. So are you guys down for taking this little prototype? Okay, we're down. All right, so let me welcome my amazing co-moderator, Stephanie, so two Jersey girls holding it down on this panel in New York City. We're bringing Jersey to New York City. And I just want to say a few words about Stephanie, who's a good friend and somebody that I admire deeply. And when I met Stephanie, she was working already for Communities First Fund, and she was already dreaming about all the amazing resources that we need to bring to communities that are most impacted by climate change. She was like, these are our resources, these are the people's resources, and how do we get it to the places that need it most? And what impressed me most about Stephanie, and you all know this if you've met her, is that she's a weaver. She's a connector. She walks into a room, she's like, oh, you need to talk to this person. This agency, you need to connect with this agency. And the last time we were together, I think was in North Carolina, in Greensboro, at the People's Hearing, this beautiful event held by former members of the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council called Speak Easy and Speak Free. And there were 400, 500 people that came out from around North Carolina to testify about what they wanted for their communities, their dreams, their hopes, and all the work that they were doing in their communities every day to make their communities livable and thriving. And Stephanie spoke at that panel, and she said something that really stuck with me, which was, you know, we see these crises, whether they be political, economic, climate crises, they come in cycles. And in those moments of ebb, in those moments of downturn, that's when we need to nurture and water our seeds. Plant our seeds and water them and nurture them. And that starts with building and strengthening the ties that we have to each other. So if you're a weaver, if you're a connector, if you're a builder, we need to strengthen those ties. And now's the moment to do that. And we're gonna do that today here on the panel and with all of you. So Stephanie, tell me, I know it's hard times out here, but tell me, how are you coming into this space today?
Well, one, I'm feeling so grounded. I just want to thank Janitza again for just the beautiful way that she reminded us of who we are. You know, even as I look into the audience, I'm just thinking about folks who've been doing this work, whose names aren't often called on anybody's stage, but who has selflessly been pushing for progress. When I think about the push and pull of our progress as people, I think about just the groundedness of our people and the fact that the reality is they have always been light bearers, even in the darkest times. And what I love about that thought process is that light always overcomes darkness. It doesn't matter how dark it is. But when you hold the light, when you are a light bearer in that way, and that is what's running through all of our DNAs, when you really think about the journey and the legacy of our people, as Janitza was asking, who are you? What I was sitting with is, as a daughter, you know, a great-granddaughter of a villager who, when the first white man came into the Suwé rivers of Sierra Leone, they sent him to go speak on behalf of his people. I have always been an advocate. And on this panel are folks who have really been advocating in their own ways. And in this audience in the same way. I think sometimes when we talk about what progress looks like, we don't often ground it in the reality that it starts with everyday people. And, you know, honestly, Anna, as I'm sitting here thinking about the 20 years of the Tishman Center, but under your leadership, what it has been, you have created a space for leaders to rest. You've created a space for leaders to reimagine, you know? When I think about Angela and the vision of what it looked like, that first Trump wave brought a level of exhaustion to our people. And when time came, as Biden came in, we didn't have the infrastructure, the social infrastructure that I thought we had, because we were all burnt out from being outside. We were tired. And yet there were so many folks who kept pushing, and you were one of them. You've been a thought leader in ways and in rooms, and your name is called in spaces. And you know, it's so powerful when I think about it, because you are the best example of a pracademic.
That's a bad academic. Close your ears,
Bring
don't.
this work of research to the people, okay? The new school is not just for those who are seeking to learn, but it has become the place where people transform. And policies are being curated and made and mastered. And the ways in which you all have held space for the leaders of our time, I just thank you, and Angela, for investing, because you did the work. I just think about Ironbound. You know, it's funny because the conversation of what has been playing itself out started with just a few of us in a room together really thinking about what we needed to meet the moment. There wasn't even an IRA bill at the time. It was just us in a room recognizing the infrastructure investment that was going to play into our communities and realizing that we needed to really figure out another way. And as we think about this panel really being about the power of people, right? And the need that we have to have that is the only way that our progress can move forward. And so I personally just want to say thank you, because you all have used every space, every room, every opportunity that you all had access to ensure that our people have the agency to continue to move forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. That was very kind of you to say that. We all have a role to play, so we are trying to do what we can, but we are very lucky today because we get to start out our conversation with Kaniela and Julia here, who are going to help us set the context for how we build this whole conversation, which is really where it should always start, is close to home, frontline, grassroots voices centering us. And so I want to invite Julia and Kaniela to bring in their homes. Tell us about what's happening in New Mexico and Hawaiʻi. What are you bearing witness to in your communities? What are you seeing at home? Are the challenges and bright spots? Give us any examples, like tangible examples of what you're seeing on the ground in terms of what you're winning and making progress on. And of course, you're in a room here with a lot of folks watching here and virtually. Are there any calls to action? How do you want to call people in to some of the work that you're doing? And maybe we'll start with Julia, if you don't mind, from New Mexico. Yeah.
Okay. Hinomopi Heremba in Bewam de im Yamturi the Huniko in Pewe in Hawaii Shiwimba the Daikum Kitupaf the Dutaiwem the Heibaiti and Aku we wem EU Bethui in Kewi. Good morning, everyone. As mentioned, I'm Julia Bernal, the Executive Director of Pueblo Action Alliance. Yes, I have like a lot of my folks here in the audience. Really honored that we have the opportunity to bring a 30-person delegation from New Mexico, including Pueblo Action Alliance, our New Mexico No False Solutions Coalition, and its steering committee members. Because I think we bring a very unique analysis to the climate crisis conversation and the climate crisis mitigation and adaptation strategies, as I will try to ground you in a snapshot of what our landscape is, what it looks like and what it's currently facing. So, as mentioned, I'm from Sandia, Pueblo. This is one of the 19 pueblos of New Mexico. My tribe is nestled in between the Sandia Mountains and the Rio Grande River. The Rio Grande is our largest tributary, and actually has its headwaters in Colorado, goes through New Mexico down to Texas, and is actually supposed to make its way into Mexico. But it is a changing river. It's been highly engineered over the past I'd say 75, 80 years, and this has really impacted our communities as we have a culture and interdependence with the natural world that stabilizes our relationship with water, being that we're from an arid to semi-arid environment. We are still grounded in very traditional practices of communicating with water through ceremonies, songs, and dances, and ultimately I believe that those ceremonial actions that we partake in are also water management strategies, because we call on the rain to help provide abundance to our crops, to our ecosystems, and ultimately that gives us life in a very traditional sense. But I want to kind of touch on sort of like the geopolitics in New Mexico, because we're very unique in the sense that New Mexico has it's no secret that New Mexico is very rich, not just in resources, but in culture. And we have a populace of indigenous folks, Pueblo folks, 23 tribes, but also land-grant communities that were Spanish settlers that came in the late 1500s, 1600s, who have also adopted relationships with the land. And so we do have an interesting history of land-based peoples and indigenous peoples, and that has really shaped the land tenure and the water rights governance throughout the state. We are governed by what they call prior appropriation doctrine, meaning first in time, first in right. Pueblo tribes have prior and paramount water rights, the most senior water rights in New Mexico, which I believe were established by our resistance against Spanish conquest, and ultimately has also secured our land bases and waterways because we were never physically removed from our territories. We still occupy our ancestral homelands. And in a colonial sense as well, framework, we also have very strong political positionality as landowners and water rights holders. But we're often left out of the decision-making processes when it comes to how we're using land and we're using water to develop energy, to experiment on new different types of technologies that are often being touted at the international level. And New Mexico has historically been treated as a resource colony, much like other national energy sacrifice zones that have been historically impacted through this domestic energy dominance agenda that's been happening since even the Nixon administration. National energy sacrifice zones have been designated to sacrifice communities' health and well-being as a trade-off to extract resources, and those resources are then used to contribute to a finite financial climb, or infinite financial climb using finite resources. So from our perspective as a Pueblo Indigenous, from a Pueblo Indigenous worldview, we are really trying to organize ourselves on a values-based context. Because we're, well, the majority of New Mexico is democratically run, but we have a very large spectrum of political positionality. And if we start mobilizing our communities on a value-based system, because New Mexicans care so much about water, care so much about land management, stewardship, that maybe we can start creating some ethical space for a Western colonial framework of law to an indigenous rights, indigenous worldview. And so that's ultimately what I was invited here to speak about, was a lawsuit that we have currently filed as a very diverse plaintiff group of indigenous frontline environmental justice and fence line communities. We are suing the state on not adequately implementing policies to uphold its constitutional duty to its pollution control clause. And what that clause means is that the state legislature has a responsibility and duty to implement meaningful environmental protections so that our natural resources and landscapes avoid despoilment. And our position is that that is not being upheld. And so, you know, while we're engaged in this lawsuit against the state of New Mexico, the governor's administration, and the legislature in the frameworks of Western jurisprudence, I want to also put a placemaker on some of the legal language that we're arguing against, because maybe this is an opportunity to create some ethical space around that language, because there's words like fundamental, responsibility, duty. Those can be redefined in an indigenous worldview as we rematriate and as we return back to a sacred responsibility to be in balance with the natural world. And I think that's the analysis that we are really critically trying to bring, not just on a localized level, but on a global level, as nation states and frontline communities are really looking towards indigenous and land-based analysis and perspectives and ways of knowing to mitigate climate crises. And so that's the message that I'm bringing here with you all today, along with my relatives is like, give us an opportunity to share our teachings with you, to share our values, so that way we can break down some of these political binaries and return to systems that are value-based, and humble ourselves in action to humanize these systems again. Thank you.
Julia, as you were talking, something that came to my spirit as a cultural bearer who practices the art of remembering. I'm sitting with Karen Rose, who's based in Brooklyn, but she speaks of the importance of the true AI, ancestral intelligence. And as you speak to the stewardship that your people have always held, many of us come from spaces that have always cultivated the land and cared for the land, and that many of us have been raised in practices that we haven't always honored. But there is an invitation in this moment to really return back to more than a ChatGTP quote, but really going back to getting our hands in the soil and cultivating what's necessary. This moment offers us an opportunity to really reflect on the ways of our people and pull out the things that we know to be true. And so I thank you for being able to come and sit and say, we need to go back to an indigenous worldview, because there was a harmony with the land and our people that we are continuing to forget. And in this moment, in this political climate where folks are actively trying to erase our understanding of how we are supposed to know our stories, it is even more imperative that we go back to that original AI of our people and ground ourselves in that truth. So I just want to say thank you for that.
We're going to continue on the invitation to learn and hear from Kaniela about his homeland.
All right. Aloha ina kākou, o Kaniela ko inoa, o Maui mai au. I'm from Hawaiʻi, here in New York City, 5,000 miles away, in the middle of a concrete jungle talking about the environment. Back home we call it aloha aina, the love for the land, not political party, not new age spirituality, but culture. A deep patriotism that's rooted in our interconnectedness with each other and the land. But I'm preaching to a choir here that already agrees with me, but who I want to bring into the room are our cousins from Wyoming, Utah, Alaska, my home on Maui, who often feel excluded from conversations like these. Just like us, they see politicians who should protect the land, but instead they're selling it off piece by piece to corporations and billionaires. They want to fight, but they don't know where to start. Because major environmental groups have tied themselves to the Democratic Party. A party that is now seeing record low approval ratings, leaving most Alohaina that I know back home without a political home. And what suffers is the land. So, in addition to that, sometimes when I'm on panels like these, it's like we're speaking another language than the people that I know back home. We say electrification targets, parts per million, climate apartheid. They say, my food is poisoned with pesticides. My family is sick. Why isn't the refinery built in the rich neighborhood? I just want to swim in the lake I grew up in. So I'm calling on all of us today to get back to the basics. There was a time when hikers, birders, hunters, farmers, conservationists, they all sat together and they formed some of our largest environmental organizations the world has ever seen. And they let everyone in. Ironically, those same groups are losing the political fight because they become too political, too partisan. They forgot how to connect people to the land and to each other, and then to the fight. So let's get a new generation out hiking, birding, farming, and surfing, black, brown, and white, working class, and those who can help us buy the land back. I think that's the mission that I've been set out to do back home on Maui, where everyone is welcome. On the partisan divide, we've been told that blue means higher taxes, red means a corporate free-for-all, but nobody I met in a red state wants to let corporations pollute their water source. No one in a blue state wants to pay taxes for endless wars. We all want to cut subsidies to Exxon and Monsanto. We all want to build homes our kids can live in, not condos for foreign speculators. We all want clean streams, lakes, and we all want to breathe clean air. So that's going to require us finding ways not just to mobilize the power that we've already built, but organize new people, having real conversations, not just in rooms like these, but on the ground. When the fires hit Lahaina on my home, Maui, that really was the task. Rather than just spamming petitions to mine data and build our organization, we said, who are the leaders right now that can actually reach people on the ground despite their political affiliation? And we identified 5 young leaders. We then brought all the elders into the room that would normally carry out a fight like this, and weren't quite getting along at the time, a lot of the uncles. And we didn't ask for their permission, but we asked for their blessing to kind of let this new generation rise up and lead. There are single moms among our ranks, immigrants, first generation, indigenous folks, land protectors, people that still grew traditional taro in their valleys. And they're the ones that really took the reins. It didn't matter who you voted for, it didn't matter how educated you were. If you could reach people on a real level, you were a leader. And rather than the same sort of methods that we do, we gave everyone an iPad, and the first job was, you're a survivor, you know the community, go talk to people. And they ran needs assessments with those iPads, and were able to reach 3,000 people in a matter of 4 days because they're in the hotels, in the survivor hotels with them. So these larger organizations were setting up these shops in like nearby malls, but nobody had a car, so they're only signing up like 10 people a day. But when we empowered survivors, it really took it to the next level. The last question in that needs assessment was, would you be willing to come out and fight with us down the line? And it was thousands of people said yes. So instantly, when the first city council hearings were happening, we could turn out 500, 600 people that just lost their homes in these fights in a real level. Because we knew that disaster capitalism wasn't just realtors buying up the land, it was the policy fights, legislative fights down the line. So we actually raised money, C4 money, to do that fight down the line. Fast forward, we've occupied a beach, the most popular tourist beach. We call it fishing for housing, because as long as you're fishing, one of the laws we passed, you can stay on the beach. And they're able to convert thousands of illegal vacation rentals to long-term housing for survivors. They're able to form the first partnership ever with the National Renewable Energy Lab at the grassroots level, where you're rebuilding a place that's going to be 100% clean. And that's happening in real time. And we're actually, I talk about rebuilding the village a lot in like a metaphoric sense, but we're actually looking at rebuilding a village where you have like the indigenous and immigrant folks working together and building that working class power in a way never before seen. We have, the agriculture that's actually helping our local community and feeding our kids. There's using water like a reservoir for energy storage and kind of using the gravity to bring it back to the community. Just these novel solutions that I think our ancestors knew very well, and we're just connecting it now to the technologies that we have today. So yeah, a lot of incredible work happening there, but there's also a lot of forces much greater than ours that are slowing things down, especially on the federal level. But we're trying to get creative and realize that right now it's all ho'ohui, which is addition, It's not just, like, I think we tested the limits of the power we built at the grassroots and coalitional level. Through, we passed laws at the state level, 100% renewable energy, like community solar, and then we ran up into like the edges. Federally, same thing with the Inflation Reduction Act. And now it's like, how do we, first of all, change the political system, and second, just add more people into the movement. So that's the task at hand, and yeah, happy to do my part, and I guess that's a call to action as well. Find yours.
Call to action, all of you join the effort, and we have some information about how they can support your efforts locally.
I want to just build on something that you really spoke to too, because I feel like one of the things that we have talked about, Helen and I, who's the co-founder and director of Communities First, is really, go ahead, she deserves her flowers, go ahead. But we really, one of our principles is to center the wisdom of community. And, one of the things that has been really exciting, I think, Kaniela, when I first heard your voice, it's been in multiple spaces, but the piece that resonates with me right now is in North Carolina. And the People's Hearing that has been led by the former White House Environmental Justice Council, but now the People's Environmental Justice Council through Maria Nunez-Lopez. I just want to say that what has elevated out of that conversation is really the reality that we recognize the system is broken. And it's broken on purpose. And it's not working for any of us. And whoever we had in office, we recognize that there was more of a reformist agenda. And I think that this moment offers an opportunity to really think about how do we transform. And while we have a leader who is truly operating to break, divide, remove, it also creates an opportunity for us to clear out the way to really imagine what's possible next. And so I'm deeply encouraged as we bring the next panel in, who's going to talk about how we go from local to now national and international, to really think about how the collective work of centering the wisdom of our people and also the coalition building that's going to be necessary to be able to push us forward. So I'll turn it back to you.
We're going to start transitioning to part two. And bring out the rest of our panelists. But first, before we do that, we're going to have a few words from Bob Musil, the President and CEO of the Rachel Carson Council.
Can you feel the power in this room? Sandia, I have to say I spent a lifetime, among other things, opposing nuclear weapons, nuclear testing, blowing up our nuclear weapons in the atmosphere, our national laboratories, and all that goes with it, and the people who live and are surrounded by this horror, which is how I got involved in connecting up nuclear work to environmental justice and climate work at Physicians for Social Responsibility, where I was a long time ago, and now I'm here at the Rachel Carson Council, which I'll explain that in a second, but I wanted to emphasize how much I am gaining from this moment that is not just a conference, not just a gathering, it is a community in action, not just at the Tishman School, which is fabulous, thank you very much. But we are going out around the nation and further than that. And each of our organizations and groups and communities builds on that. And I want to tell you that we are actually winning because we started communities at the local level and build to the global level. Excuse me, I'm going to have some of this vodka that they left for me. Please subtract that from my time. But it was anyhow, the shout out to Julia, who just brought me back to how a guy like me, I am your Representative senior white guy here. How did that happen? And what can we do to support and build and pay for even the things that we find out from the community leaders? It was Stephanie, I believe, who said not only we're not interested in false solutions to climate, but talked about the unnamed people. And that, at the Rachel Carson Council, is what we're doing in a major campaign against a horrible industry where huge corporations, the Drax Corporation and the Enviva Corporation, clear-cut forests starting in North Carolina, moving down the coast into Georgia and Mississippi, on out to the Southwest and the Pacific Northwest. Tens of millions of acres of forest cut, ground up in factories, turned into industrial-scale wood pellets by the hundreds of thousands of metric tons, and then shipped overseas to be burned in old coal-fired utilities for, quote, renewable energy in Europe and the UK. If you can imagine and wrap your head around that. Part of the reason that is because of international climate rules, which were heavily influenced by the very people who manufacture stuff, and as you know, have excessive influence even in our international gatherings. But back here, we started and learned about this, not because I did research in a book or my staff, but because we talked with Anita Cunningham in North Carolina, in Northampton County, who've been fighting all sorts of attacks and assaults on communities of color throughout that state, but also wood pellets in a place called Ahoskie, North Carolina. Then I heard from Treva Gear, who's in Able, Georgia, fighting another facility involved in producing wood pellets to burn and ship and pollute the planet. Crystal Martin in Gloucester, Mississippi. Gloria Alonso Cruz in South Stockton, in California. I'd never heard of any of these people, but I sure as hell learned what they already knew and were already protesting, already organizing, already pulling together communities of color, indigenous people, poor white people. So we happened to do a lot of work around the country and said, you know, shit, we talk about climate justice, we're going to do climate justice. What can we do that you can help lead? And we will try to pull people together that we just happen to have contacts with. So out of that, this campaign came together. And if those of you who are old enough to know who Rachel Carson is, allow me a quick thing here. Rachel Carson, usually known for writing Silent Spring. She wrote about pesticides and DDT, that was it. Few people know how progressive she truly was, that she spoke out about corporate greed. She talked about capitalism, in effect, being the root of monstrous evils, that the desire for easy profit and convenience is what gave us these evils. She also was an early proponent of what we call environmental justice. If you take another look at Silent Spring, which talks about pesticides, her biggest outrage in there is about the farm workers. People don't say, oh, I read Silent Spring, it's about farm workers in California who at that time were Mexicans, brought in and out, and Mexican Americans, Chicanos, who had absolutely no representation, no power, no ability to fight back, and were covered in this stuff and the chemicals. That's what she understood was an environmental injustice. Speaking of nuclear, she talked about open-air nuclear testing and how horrible that was, and had nothing but compassion, sympathy, and outrage that an Inuit mother in the Arctic could be at the end of this chain where we blow up nuclear weapons, the radiation goes into the water, it goes into the fish, it goes into the seals, it ends up in blubber, and a then called Eskimo, an Inuit mother would be nursing her child, and the radiation is passing through the breast milk across the placental barrier and harming her child. This mother didn't even know what the United States is, doesn't know what nuclear weapons are, thousands of miles away, and subjected to this. That is what drove the passion and the commitment of Rachel Carson and the work that we do today, building on that legacy, not just a book called Silent Spring. And so, as we have worked and followed the leadership of the people in the communities in those various states that I've mentioned, we have tried to help build and connect them to other local people, to state organizations, to regional ones, finally creating an entire network that we brought together recently, for example, in good old Washington, D.C. I come to you from that occupied city, and we are resisting despite the National Guard. And from that event, you have to picture young people from all over the country from our campus network, New School, hello. As I mentioned, there were people, communities around the country, and stormed the Capitol and pushed on those representatives of whatever party, and they don't know about this because it isn't covered in the mainstream media. It is not the attention of many major organizations. And so at this point, it has finally reached the point of power where we have stopped 2 attempts by Drax to destroy forests in California, a facility in Stockton, and the stock prices and finances of Drax and Endeavor are plunging to the bottom. That is the power of community-led organizations and coalitions that we are proud to stand behind, work with, and put up front. Thank you.
Just want to say I'm really enjoying the conversation and the energy in the room. And I'm so honored to be a tiny part of this event today. My name is Jackie Flynn Mogensen, and I am a science reporter at Mother Jones Magazine, which is part of the Center for Investigative Reporting. It's been a hell of a year to be a science reporter. My colleagues and I at CIR have spent the last several months covering the administration's unprecedented crackdown on scientific research, including mass funding cuts and job terminations at scientific agencies, censorship of climate science, and plans to roll back bedrock environmental policies. At the same time, we've shared stories from federal workers, scientists, and organizers pushing back. Independent journalism like ours is essential, at least I think so. And I mean it really earnestly when I say none of our work would be possible without our readers and supporters. So if you've ever clicked on a Mother Jones story, listened to one of our podcasts, including Reveal and More to the Story, check them out, liked a social media post, or donated to CIR, you've helped support the work that my colleagues and I do. And if you'd like to keep supporting our award-winning journalism, there's a new way to do that. Behind me, you'll see a QR code. On Sunday, Mother Jones and CIR launched the Climate Desk newsletter, where we're going to collect the top climate news stories every week across our newsroom and 14 other partner newsrooms, including The Guardian, Grist, Vox, Inside Climate News, Wired, Slate, and more. And my colleagues worked really hard on this, so please check it out if you have the capacity. You can sign up with this QR code or at motherjones.com/newsletters. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Stephanie for part 2 of our conversation today, National to Global Coalitions Powered by Communities. Thank you.
I'm grateful to Mother Jones and just the work of being able to tell the story, especially in this muzzle effect that we find ourselves. As we go from the conversation of the local to national to global, I want to just put in context the moment that we have right now, because it's very easy to be lost in the noise that is intentionally being curated and created, even as we go into another UN assembly where we're having this conversation on climate change and the US doesn't seem to be present. But here today we have leaders who are continuing to show us another way. I want to also put into context the reality of these next 16 months. Between now and next year, we have 38 governors up for re-election. That's right. With the current majority term limited, which offers an opportunity to really imagine another way forward. Between now and next year, we have 30 out of 43 elected attorney generals up for re-election. And we've got all of Congress on the House and a third of the Senate. So for as much as we may feel like we find ourselves in this dark space, I need you to understand that this is actually our organizing moment, because everything could change by this time in 2 months. Yes. And so I hope that you all are sitting with a little bit more hope in what's possible, and then after hearing this coalition of folks who are doing their work at every level, hopefully we'll leave a little bit more stronger. I want to start with Representative Kathy Castor, one by just saying thank you. Because over the last few years, you have really helped to lead the work. This current administration has pulled us out of meaningful climate conversations. It's shifted our regulations, our ability to really take our conversation both nationally and globally to another level. And yet you've been part of the Sustainable Energy and Environment Coalition, an institute that's doing a level of coalition work that may really help us to take things to the next level through the Thrive Economies Project. And so I'd love for you to both spend some time just uplifting what you've been doing to date. I also just want to speak to the fact that what you all did with the climate work over the last 6 years, but really as you had your committee and leading the work as part of the select committee, you uplifted solutions and uplifted voices in a very different way. But it sounds like there's some lessons that you've learned since that time, and would love to hear a little bit more about it. So thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Congresswoman Kathy Castor of Florida. Thank you to President Towers, and it's fantastic to be here at the New School. Thank you, Dr. Batista, and thank you for all of your work on Justice 40 and lifting people up. I'm one member of Congress, but one of a mighty group of the Sustainable Energy and Environment Coalition. We're talking about members as diverse as Congresswoman Doris Matsui of Sacramento, to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York, to Nikki Buzinski of Indiana, to Paul Tonko of New York, Melanie Stansberry of New Mexico, and we have just embarked on the next chapter to determine the climate and equity solutions that will help solve the climate crisis and help us avoid the worst impacts of climate and pollution, but to do it by empowering everyone and lifting everyone up, finding the opportunities we have to work together. And you're right, we learned a lot of lessons. It came out of the first Trump regime, where there was a massive backlash across the country to these outdated, mean-spirited policies. I sense that is happening again right now. So we want to be ready with the solutions, but it doesn't happen by accident. What happened a few years ago, the Democrats took the House of Representatives back, and Speaker Pelosi had tackling climate issues at the top of her agenda. She organized a select committee on the climate crisis, and our first requirement was to listen, to get out of Washington, D.C., to ask people's opinions. So we asked scientists and entrepreneurs, tribal leaders, environmental justice leaders, academics, sure, but our neighbors back home. We wanted to develop a group of policies that would reduce pollution and help build more resilient communities. And when we announced the report, it was in the days after the murder of George Floyd. It was at the outset of the COVID pandemic. We were on the steps of the Capitol where we announced it, and it was so hot that day that someone fainted at our press conference. For dramatic effect, they're okay. But that what that did is all of those policies in that climate action plan were then infused in the bipartisan infrastructure law, where we channeled money, and the Inflation Reduction Act to build a clean energy economy and build more resilient communities across America. Part of that also involved international coalition building, going to the UN Conference of Parties and interacting with partners and allies and speaking truth to power to other nations that weren't doing their part. But let's face it, the United States of America has an outsized responsibility to cut pollution and build resilient communities at home and abroad. So that's where our new Thriving Economy project comes in, because we're not done. We haven't solved the climate crisis. The days are getting hotter, the summers are getting longer. This is the 1-year anniversary of my community being devastated by Hurricanes Helene and Milton, where thousands of my neighbors were flooded out, and they're still trying to repair their homes. Many won't ever get back into their homes. And at the same time, these oil and gas companies and electric utility monopolies are raising rates and raising prices on everyone, so there's a huge affordability piece of this. So we're going to get out there and listen again to all of you. We need you to be engaged and to inform us. Thank you. We're going to count on the New School for helping to develop these projects. We're going to listen to our mayors, our local leaders, our tribal leaders, the folks who are working on the front lines to repair communities like Lahaina. Climate reality. I mean, Dr. Bullard and Catherine Flowers helped us with our first iteration for that climate action plan, but now it's more urgent. It's more urgent than ever that we build these coalitions, and that starts with listening and broad outreach. So I hope you all will help us with this initiative so that we can build a more sustainable and thriving economy, and that means everyone. That doesn't mean just the rich and powerful. That means everyone from the bottom up. Your parents, your grandparents, your neighbors, all of our communities deserve an opportunity to thrive and to live out their dreams, and that's what we intend to do.
I want to shift the conversation over to this way, because it's very interesting when folks are like, oh my God, we're now having to go back to state and local. And I'm like, that's the cycle of our politics. You go from federal when you're in, you try to push as much bold policy, but who actually gets it done are local mayors. The reality is that all politics is local. Yep. And I just want to thank Mayor Bibb, because in this moment we have mayors who are continuing to rally that America is still all in. And one of the pieces that I've had the privilege of helping to cultivate and curate is the largest coalition to help to support the implementation of both IRA and the infrastructure resources through the Communities First Infrastructure Alliance. And the U.S. Climate Mayors has been an active part of that. But Mayor, you now chair the leadership that is happening. And most people wouldn't think Cleveland, Ohio, or even Ohio would be part of this moment.
OH. There we go.
But you're helping to lead the way. So I don't know where you're finding the time, but I'd love to hear how in this moment you are helping to hold the banner for all of us, both across the country, but also at home.
Thank you. Well, it's an honor to be here at the New School. As an urban studies major in college, I was very jealous of this school and the science of cities that came out of the New School. And Stephanie, in your early comments, you talked about all the elections of consequence coming up, from the gubernatorial races to the AG races, but there are thousands of mayor's races this year and next year that will allow us to enact our values at the local level, from big cities like New York and Cleveland to small towns like Massillon, Ohio. And so I would say this: Cleveland has always been at the center of the environmental justice movement, and let me tell you why. In 1968, we elected the first black mayor to lead a major American city, the late great Carl B. Stokes. And like Carl Stokes, when I campaigned to be mayor, I didn't think I would be a climate mayor. I ran on public safety. I ran on picking up the trash and fixing potholes. But the year after Mayor Stokes was elected, the Cuyahoga River caught on fire. Because at the time, Cleveland, like Pittsburgh and Detroit, we were really leading America's industrial might and industrial revolution. But we didn't take care of our waterways. So our river catches on fire, and Mayor Stokes does a nationwide tour across the country talking about the importance of addressing the environmental justice issues in cities like Cleveland, which then led to the creation of the EPA, which then led to the development of the Clean Water Act. You don't get that without Cleveland and Mayor Stokes.
Let's go, Cleveland.
So we got our receipts. And so let me tell you about the work we're doing in Cleveland and why public-private partnerships matter now more than ever. And first, before I say this, I want to say it's so great to have members of Congress like Congresswoman Castor fighting the good fight in D.C. But I'm a little biased, and in this moment, what we're seeing right now is that Washington ain't coming to save us. We got to save ourselves. And city by city, we are doing the work. So for example, in Cleveland, we just launched our brand new climate action plan on Earth Day this year. We engaged residents going door to door, going to churches, going to barbershops, going to community town hall conversations. And we framed it not on just reducing greenhouse gas emissions. We framed it on jobs. We framed it on solving the cost of living crisis facing Clevelanders. Through our climate action plan, we're going to be able to put nearly $20 million back in the pockets of Clevelanders by 2030. We believe 10,000 new green jobs will be created by 2030. So we invested $10 million in training folks from the neighborhood to weatherize homes, install solar panels. That is the work happening on the ground. And so as we go forward, we must talk about these issues and really uplift what's happening at the local level. Because without mayors, without governors, this work won't happen. And so it's important that we have these public-private partnerships in place to meet the moment now more than ever.
I can't wait to see where you go next after you do this, but thank you so much. Phyllis, I really want to now shift to you to take us to the global state of play. Ultimately, the Climate Reality Project in many ways has been at the forefront of teaching people across the globe, from Ghana to Brazil to Paris, how to fight for smart climate policies in our communities. But I wanted you to maybe discuss the unique and also the important effort that President Gore, Vice President Gore at the time, launched 20 years ago, and how the global strategy has evolved, particularly in the current environment and reality.
Well, thank you. And thanks for inviting me to be here. It's such an honor to be on a panel with such a distinguished group of people, and I'd like to say happy anniversary to the Tishman Center. Amazing. And it's nice to see so many friendly faces. We have a climate reality leader in the audience, State Senator Smith, so nice to see you. So we're not quite 20, the Climate Reality Project. We're 19, going to be 20 next year. And over that time, we've really had an emphasis on helping people understand the climate crisis and be able to communicate about it. That was kind of our early mission from the Vice President. And how to make urgent action a priority across every sector of society. Today, of late, we find ourselves in a different situation, which is not so much the need to help people understand the science of climate change, but really to help them understand the solutions and the advocacy needed to really make climate action a possibility, whether or not it's in their village, it's in their community, it's in their country, or it's at the global level. So in the 19 years that we've been in existence, we've grown from a training that was 50 people in the Vice President's barn to now 4 million people around the world who are working towards climate action. So we're very appreciative of all the work we've done. We have our network represents people from over 196 countries and territories around the world. So the way we approach the climate crisis is really twofold. First, as I said, through our trainings, we want to expand the movement. We need more people in the movement, particularly at this moment. So how can we expand the movement? We do that through our trainings. We recruit and train people, and there, as I said, we not only give them the knowledge of the solutions and other things, but we give them the network. This is what's so important also in this fight, is that people can work in community as a network to get things done. Because the climate crisis seems daunting, doesn't it, when you're all by yourself? So it's really important that we have that network. And then second, we harness the power of our global network in really 3 areas that we think are necessary to address the climate crisis, which is reducing emissions, of course, financing the just transition with a particular focus on the global south, and then, of course, promoting global leadership. And throughout our work, climate justice is embedded. We know that must be part of the solution, any solution. And at a time, at a moment that we find ourselves in now, when countries are stepping back from their commitments, certainly our own, and we're finding a lack of ambition, where the Secretary General is going to convene countries, prime ministers and presidents tomorrow, and they'll explain and present their nationally determined contributions or their climate plans. And so we'll really understand the delta between the Paris Agreement and ambition, right? Where do we need to work on that? So we've been trying to work on an increased global ambition. This year we launched something called the Reality Tour, and the 10-year anniversary of the Paris Agreement, right? Just 5 years until those critical 2030 scientific benchmarks need to be reached. We launched in Paris, and then we were in Nairobi, in Rio. We're going to be in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia in a week. And I think the thing that gives me hope in this moment is we have been oversubscribed everywhere. We have thousands more people sign up for our trainings than we can accommodate. And so we launched a global platform putting content from our trainings on that platform. Over 100,000 people have signed up in just 6 months. So there is a hunger to get things done, to support elected leaders across the country and around the world to really increase and enhance ambition. And you asked earlier, what's your ground game? We just announced that we here in the United States are absorbing a grassroots organization called the Climate Change Makers to make sure that we can make climate action easy and accessible to everyone. Because again, we know we need more people in this movement at this moment. So join us. Join us on the platform. Join us next year in trainings back in the United States. Join us through the Climate Change Makers, but be a leader, make a change. Join Climate Reality. And if I could just say one other thing, I live in Arlington, Virginia, right outside Washington, D.C., and the true canary in the climate coal mine is two states that are going to be electing leaders this November. So we're watching what's happening in 2026, but also watch what's happened this November, just weeks away. So.
New Jersey and Virginia, y'all are up. So I want to now shift back to just connect us all to this conversation that we've been having, just to be able to really speak to how we continue to do this work in this moment. Maybe I'll just sit a bit in my truth in this moment, because one of the things that I'm sitting with, I spent a few days in Montgomery earlier this month, and Brian Stevenson has done something amazing at the Equal Justice Initiative, but what he does is ground us in the reality of our history as a country. And it's powerful to me because what I see is the cycles of our progress as people. And he really grounds us in Reconstruction and the power of how the federal government was able to start to both repent for the pieces that it had done in the past and in the harm that had been done, but also offer the future progress of what it means to be able to build. And it's really powerful because what you see throughout those themes are things around economics, education. It's really about making sure that we're doing the democratizing of our voting rights as part of that. And mayors, you were talking about just the reality of bringing the climate conversation to the realities of everyday kitchen table conversations and making it less about meeting our greenhouse gas goals, but really being able to show people how they may be able to invest in their communities and be part of the solution. It's just such a powerful piece. For me, what I was sitting in as well was that it then took us 100 years to get to the civil rights era, and I found myself really trying to figure out what was happening in that moment at the countercurrent level. And some of the pieces were the institutions. The institutions that were necessary had to be built. And in this moment, we're seeing the attack of our institutions, whether it's really thinking about media and what's put out there and how we reclaim it, and we give thanks for things like Mother Jones and others who are really continuing to find ways to tell the collective story so that we can see ourselves. The institutions of being able to build and organize together, NAACP, urban leagues were all birthed during that time, you know? And you get to this moment for civil rights, I'm like, what is happening there that really starts to play itself out? And it speaks to what Kaniela starts to talk about. Like, it's beyond ourselves talking about blue state, red state. It's really about, what does this mean for us at the most localized level, for our people, for our neighbors, for our families? And then there became this undercurrent of the change that we then see play itself out. And it would take another 50 years for us to get to an era of Barack Obama. And I'm like, oh wow, we've cut it in half. What is happening there? And people are starting to figure out how to organize better. They're taking the ancestral legacy and intelligence, the wisdom of how we've done this work, and they're now moving in a very different way. They're also fighting back. They're not taking the black codes that limited them during that Jim Crow era. Oh no, they're like, we are going to continue to do the fight even as they push us back. The resistance comes, but then you see the movement happening still. And so I'm like, well, that means we got another 25 years, and from Barack Obama to now, 08 to 25, we actually may be closer than we think we are. And our country has this 12-year cycle of which we go back and we go forward, but the true progress always seems to be grounded with the people.
Right. Right.
And so in this moment, I'd love to just hear, are there still opportunities? I mean, you all have talked about the work that you all are thinking about at the congressional level and going back to the local. We're talking about how to start to organize and reorganize folks. And it's very, I mean, I'm also sitting as someone who worked at a large Big Green for years. I find myself just so, if I'm gonna speak my full truth, just so interested in the narrative that this fight is over. And I'm thinking, I'm not sure that the people who they're talking to were on the playing field the last 4 years. But the reality is that in this room, there have been leaders who have been continuing to do the fight. And I can remember when Maria was coming to me saying, we have to go to people, to the people. And we need to give them a level of spaciousness to organize. And we can't organize outside because they're coming for our people. They are literally putting masks and taking our people away. But we have an opportunity to hold space in a very different way and bear witness. And I'm like, bear witness? I worked in the local government. That sounds like a lot of anger, a lot of frustration with like no solutions that come out of that. And she was like, no, watch. Because in our hearts, and I love this, no, I really do love local government and politics, truly. Because there's no place that you can't go in America where when you go and sit next to somebody, they don't have a solution for how we get out of our situation. I have never traveled to any place as an elected official where they did not tell me the game plan and the strategy that we needed to be able to push progress forward. And it reminds me that ultimately, the only way we're going to get through this is together. And so I want to turn it to the panel to maybe give some final thoughts about this moment and really the ground game and connecting the ground game to the progress that we see as possible. Because ultimately, I love when folks talk about the moral arc bends towards justice. Baby, in order for this thing to bend, there's got to be a countercurrent that allows it. And we get better with each fight. And so we may seem to be down, but please trust, we are winning.
That's right. That's right.
I would love to have the panelists maybe weave in here and thoughts about how you're linking up a lot of the struggles and the wins and the coalition building that you're doing, from the very local to to the COPs, to the global efforts.
I can go, yeah. First of all, this was amazing. These panelists, I've learned so much here myself. So shout out. Also shout out to the Tishman fellows in the room and Tishman for taking care of us. So I helped start the Green New Deal Network when I was organizing with a group called People's Action, which is community-run groups that are nonpartisan, just kind of community power from the ground up, meeting people where they are. 14 national groups came together. We raised $40 million, 700 state and local groups, created tables across 23 states, and we were the ground game for the Inflation Reduction Act. We won, kind of, not everything we wanted, but we tested the limits of the power we have now. So the question is, how do we grow more community organizations, more powerful community organizations? We're at a moment now where climate is polarizing. It's weird. We've backtracked in some ways where it's become a partisan issue. What's not a partisan issue are the causes of climate change. We burn things and we mismanage land. That's all it is. That's all it is. And nobody supports that. Like, if we just stop biomass, for example, we would decarbonize 2 times over across the globe, right? Or maybe it's 1.5 times. You might know this better than me. But it will do the job. Just that, just biomass, right? And the colonial land mismanagement, like, that's something in Lahaina that even the Trumpers were like, yeah, we gotta get these like big oligarchical corporations out of our land, return it to the people. Like, on the narrative front, that's it, right? On the organizing front, Sierra Club used to bring together hikers. No parties involved, just if you like to hike, come join us. Where's our generation with that? Like, most of those boards now are like elders. But like, I have friends, native folks, black folks, brown folks that want to go on hikes, but like they're lonely and they don't know who to join. Like, get back to that. The birding groups, the trail groups, and if the big greens aren't gonna do it, we need new orgs that will, right? Lastly, I talked about the limits of the political system. There are opportunities to restructure, reconstitute the way we operate. And it's like taboo, like we have the oldest constitution as if it's a feature and not a bug. Like, modern democracies change their constitutions every 10 or 20 years to keep it relevant. Like, this is horse and buggy era, we're in social media era, and we have the same constitution, right? In Hawaiʻi, we're looking at a constitutional convention in 2028, and there's groups that are looking at maybe changing the way things are done in 2040, across the United States. And this is just, it's like a necessary thing. We talk about the 2-party system and the ebbs and flows, and okay, that party is reigning, but like, what if we had a Green Party, a Labor Party, Indigenous Party that could work across issues and actually build a coalitional government with proportional representation or ranked choice voting? There's like so many things. What if we didn't have a judicial supremacy and legislators actually had power over the Supreme Court? Wouldn't that be nice? right? So I think we just got to think bigger, shoot bigger, and even if we fall short, it's much farther than we go marginally.
All right, well, there is a lot of common ground, no matter your political stripes, on the cost of living right now, because people are just getting crushed all across the country. So I think there's a real opportunity to talk about climate in terms of affordability, because climate isn't just about the weather, it is about your wallet, whether you're talking about the ability to put solar panels on your home or business to save on your electric bill, or to ensure that your local community is building greater resilience, to keep you safe from storms, fires, protecting workers from extreme heat. You know, back home, we didn't just suffer the hurricanes last year. This past year, we set an all-time temperature record of 100 degrees. In a tourism state, that's our economy. We want people to come and have a good time and be able to be outside and work and thrive. So I would say, as you build your coalitions, talk about standing up to the powerful special interests so that everyone can afford their way of life, and then looking at the new opportunities in sustainability. I'm so proud of the graduates of this institution that are going out to solve the problems because you have that grounding in sustainability. The opportunities are enormous. There are more jobs in the clean energy sector now than the old legacy fossil fuel sectors. We need your talents now. We need you to engage and become the leaders that we need to help everyone thrive.
One of the reasons why there's a large delegation here from New Mexico, as well as to also mobilize ourselves under a banner of corporate accountability. I feel it's important to provide an example from New Mexico that our administration is really allowing the private sector to dictate what our energy agenda is going to look like in the future. Private corporations, with the assistance of the public sector, have continued this harmful legacy of over-extraction, of labor exploitation, experimentation. And currently we're witnessing an inequitable transition to false solutions, like the build-out of hydrogen of every color, carbon sequestration, direct air capture, cloud seeding, other geoengineering, experiments that I probably don't even know about, large AI data centers that use an incredible amount of water. One of our targets here during our time in New York is Blackstone, one of the largest investment corporations in the world, who have raised billions of dollars in an energy transition partners fund to literally buy out New Mexico's publicly owned utility to create financial pathways for the false solutions that I just mentioned. So I think it's incredibly important in coalition building that, yes, while we're trying to organize through a political spectrum, we can't ignore private corporation accountability and how the private sector is driving climate solutions.
Stephanie, I loved how you frame our closing part of this conversation. I want to just offer two thoughts. One, I think the big reason why we are here in this moment right now, given the leadership we see in the White House, is the fact that people from my political party, when we get power, we don't know how to use it effectively. We want a focus group, the answer to death. We want to check every box with every coalition versus getting shit done fast. So we have to think differently about how we wield power and execute power fast and effectively for our values and our people. And the sooner we can go about doing that, the better we'll be at the ballot box to win more elections, to see the progress we need. The second thing I would say, as my late grandmama taught me as a kid growing up in Cleveland, she would say, baby, well done is better than well said. That needs to be our North Star moving forward. We can talk all day about the issues. We can talk all day about the challenges. But the more we can execute and show people the change and let them see themselves in the change, the better off we'll be city by city. And the better off we'll be that proving that this experiment in this country can really work for everybody.
Well, I agree with everything that everyone said. From the global perspective, it's really simple. The climate crisis is a fossil fuel crisis, and it's a democracy crisis. And one of the places that we can make progress globally is at COP. But the thing that we know we need to change at COP is we need to undercut the influence of the fossil fuel industry. This is what holds us back everywhere, right? At the local level, at the federal level, at the global level. And we have to change the rules. Because the fossil fuel industry sends thousands of lobbyists there. They're on negotiating teams, so they have access that civil society doesn't have. They have power that civil society doesn't have. And they were successful in making sure that the rules of the climate COP are different from a lot of other UN entities, which is we need total consensus there. Not a supermajority, total consensus. So until we can undercut the power of the fossil fuel industry and change the rules at COP, we're gonna have a challenging time getting to the ambitious outcomes that we need from COP. And by the way, the fossil fuel industry isn't just exerting its influence at the COP. They're at the climate COP, they're at the biodiversity COP, they're at the plastics treaty, they're at the ocean summit. So one thing that we can all, I think, be aligned on is that we have to build more political will and undercut the influence of the fossil fuel industry. And I'm glad to be in company with these folks because we have all the solutions we need, and these are the folks that are going to deploy them and propel them forward. So thanks for having us.
Well, this is a university, so you all have homework. Okay, we have homework to do. All of our panelists have given us not only food for thought and inspiration, but they've given us calls to action. All right, we have work to do, people. We have to organize with your neighbors, with your families, back home in your communities. We need to link up with coalitions, and we need to support good work. And you've gotten, hopefully, some great resources here today and some ideas. I want to thank our incredible speakers today, our guests here. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your time with us. I want to thank my amazing compañera here, Stephanie, our co-moderator, for her always bringing, centering us and rooting us and reminding us of what's really important. And our sponsors, and of course all of you in the audience, thank you for joining us this morning. And we have a lot more events happening. I know there are many events happening throughout the New York City. We also have events happening throughout the week here on campus at the Tishman Center, so please follow us and check out our newsletter and see all the good work we have and meet some of our fellows. We have national fellows around the country. Some of them are here. Raise your hand. Meet them. They're doing incredible work in all around the country and the territories on climate action. So thank you, everyone.